Welcome to Living Blind. I'm your host, Naomi Hazlett, and this podcast is brought to you by Balance for Blind Adults, located in Toronto, Canada. This season of Living Blind is sponsored by AMI. Here at Living Blind, we explore the perspectives and lived experiences of people with sight loss and delve into barriers, challenges, and real-life strategies for living life to the fullest. We're kicking off the third season of this podcast with an episode all about online accessible gaming with our guest, Richard Bennett. Richard is a co-founder of Knights of the Braille, which is an inclusive online community of roleplay and video game enthusiasts dedicated to providing a variety of accessible options for people with blindness and low vision. Richard tells us about his humble beginnings in the world of RPGs and the early days of making games accessible, elaborates on the Knights of the Braille community and their current lineup of games being hosted, and gives us a preview of what's coming up in the Everyone Games extravaganza taking place on Friday, September 30th and Saturday, October 1st, in partnership with Chris Cook of Old Street Solutions. We also break down some of the lingo used in gaming, reminisce about a few of our fondest memories during gaming sessions, and have some fun doing a little roleplay on the spot, with some character voices thrown in for good measure. Welcome to the podcast, Richard.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on the podcast with such fine people.
So one thing I want to say right away is that you mentioned that you're certainly not from Canada. You live down south. Is that right?
Yeah, really, really far down south. Like the movie Little Nicky, it's pretty close to hell, although we are not in hell yet.
I heard it's pretty hot out right now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I try to sit in front of the air conditioner, not exactly sit on it, but the heat index was 109 yesterday.
Yeah, wow. Well, like you said, hopefully you're in a cool spot for today's show. For those of us who are not familiar, what are tabletop role-playing games?
Well, they've been around for a lot longer than what people actually think. Back in the ancient times, and that's what I'm going to say because I can't remember the year, they have found dice and things used for rolling. What a tabletop game actually is, though, is where a group of people get around, a table, or we use Discord like a virtual table, and you take over the role of a character that you have created, and you get into that character's headspace and you act how that character would act. For instance, like if you were to choose to be a barbarian, you would go in knowing that, you're going to fight and take a lot of damage. And, that's a generic answer there, but you can also add quirks into it, like your own personality, what kind of personality you want the character to be, and things along that nature. And you usually focus in on one single thing, where it's an overarching storyline or a one-shot, which is a game that is supposed to end in a single setting. So it's like video games in the imagination, I guess, is a good way to explain it too.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically you're coming together and you're telling a story, and the story could take place in any setting, could be fantasy, could be sci-fi, and you pick a character that would fit in that setting and you roll dice to figure out how the story goes.
Right. The dice tell you whether you can actually do it or not. I've ran and played games where it was like in the Star Wars setting, and I've played and run games where it's in apocalyptic or back in like medieval kind of times. And I know there's even some out there that are a combination of pretty much anything you can think of. So it can be whatever you want it to be.
And how did you get into tabletop role-playing games in the first place?
Well, it's kind of funny in a way. I mean, I had heard about Dungeons and Dragons pretty much all my life, and being down in the South, oh, it's evil and, all kinds of stuff like that. And, I bought into that whole cookie back then, but the older I got, the ornery I got, till I got to the point where I just didn't care anymore. If I want to do it, I'm going to do it. And I was hanging out with a couple of buddies of mine and their families. And, you know, a game that would be really good for you would be Dungeons and Dragons. Well, yeah, I've always wanted to play. Well, we immediately left their house, went and bought the starter set, got back home. He opened it up. I mean, of course, I couldn't read it because, it was the printed set, and he didn't know what he was doing. So we contacted a buddy of mine from high school and got together, and that's how it all started. Ever since then, I've been, playing or running games, and which has led me into having an addiction that, people tell me it's good to have, but my wallet tells me otherwise. Finding all kinds of different tabletop games and buying them off of this website, drivethrurpg.com. And I think at last count, I had like over 50 something different games. Of course, I'll never get to run them all, but they're interesting to read at the same time.
Right. So when you first started, it sounds like you had access to the printed version, but, as you mentioned, wasn't accessible for you. But it sounds like there are a lot of resources on the internet that are accessible for folks who use screen readers or otherwise.
There are, and while the PDFs are accessible, they are accessible to a point. A lot of developers or publishers think that even though the Adobe Acrobat reader has a screen reader and it reads it, it does. That's fine. But using a screen reader, you cannot navigate with the Adobe screen reader. And whenever you try to use, like for me, instance, I use JAWS. One section will not be where it's supposed to be, so you have to scroll back up and read it and then get back down to where you needed to be. It's like it's all over the place. And that's something that Jim and I had started doing, was taking PDFs and mostly converting them to like a Word document, because he had Adobe. I'm too stingy with my money and I wouldn't pay for Adobe. So I would just convert them into Microsoft Word or, another format like that, so that it was easier to read with a screen reader. And we were doing a lot of this, off our own dime, buying the games, converting them. Granted, we got to keep them anyway, but eventually some of the publishers said that they didn't care if we, converted them or not. And I want to think we even got a couple of free ones to convert, for we got paid basically by getting to keep the rule book and all. But I mean, it's very rewarding, very time consuming. And if you'll ask my neighbors, it's very frustrating because they could hear me yell whenever something did not convert properly. But it's a passion that I found to be able to do it, because I don't want other people to come across something like, oh, I wish I could play that, but they can't read it and, follow along. So it's just something that I love to do in free time now.
Right. So you mentioned Jim. I assume you're referring to Jim O'Connell, who's the co-founder, or maybe, as you said, the person who got Knights of the Braille started in the first place.
Right. I don't usually talk about him because he's such a mean mouthed individual. No, we've become friends. He makes fun of my Canadian accent. I make fun of his Texas accent, and we just have a good time. It's what you can do whenever you become good friends. Pick at one another. Jim is a great guy from Canada, and I mean we talk at least once a week usually. Pass back emails back and forth, and we enjoy working together to get the word about accessibility out there. And there's other people that help Jim and myself too. Mostly Blind Gamer on the Discord server helps out a lot because I can't always hop back out there and change something that needs to be changed. So Mostly Blind Gamer will, hop out there and do it for me if I'm like away from the computer or doing something else at the time. So we all work together for the common goal, I guess is a proper way of saying it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely want to talk more about Discord, but just to get the timeline straight. So, you meet Jim and together you're both passionate about role-playing games. You're working on making resources accessible for people with visual impairments. And then at what point did you make it official, founding Knights of the Braille?
Well, Jim had actually started Knights of the Braille back in 2018, I believe. I think it was November of 2018. So Knights of the Braille had been around for roughly a year before I got started with them. And it started off with just a handful of people. And I think the service was called Google Meets, is where they first started their sessions at, and Skype. But slowly it evolved into a community of, at last count, I believe over 400 people.
Wow. Yeah, that's more than I heard. It was around 200. So it's double that now. That's incredible. What sorts of things are going on in the community? I guess there's the obvious, people are playing games in there, but maybe walk us through what the Discord looks like and what people are up to in there.
Well, I know there's a straight up D&D game that my friend Jesse runs. He was an original member of Knights of the Braille, and last year started actually running a group. There's a game called Lasers and Feelings. That's pretty much all I know about it, is that's just the name of it. We've had like a battle arena kind of thing in there where, you build a character and had to fight through it. We've had some Pathfinder out there. And there's also I know there's a Dungeon World game that gets run out there occasionally. So there's also a Cats game that gets run out there where you take over the character of a cat. Mostly Blind Gamer runs that, I believe, every other Wednesday. And Jim actually runs a game every other Saturday called Mutant Year Zero, where you are a mutant in the post-world apocalypse and are trying to build up your settlement and live and thrive and discover things. So it's a big variety out there, but it's a great community to have, and people are willing to help each and every other person as well.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of things there. I think one is, as you were going through all the different games, I've heard of a few of them. I've played Cats, I've played Lasers and Feelings, I've played Dungeons and Dragons. And I think one thing to point out is that all of these games have different systems and different rules. And some of them, as a sighted person, I can tell you the books are pretty big, many pages, take up a lot of space on my bookshelf. And then other ones like Lasers and Feelings are one page of rules. And so there's a lot of variety in terms of how deep you want to get into a game that has a lot of rules about how to do things. And then other ones are a little more casual, and it seems like it's more just about having a little bit of structure to telling an interesting story.
Exactly. And there's some weeks where I just, don't feel like actually running a D&D kind of game. So I found a one-page RPG called Adventure Skeletons, which is mostly just heavy role play gaming. You can create a character in less than 5 minutes, and that's all you need to do. I was running the Quest of the Braille series to, focus that, everybody can play these games, whether you're sighted or unsighted. And started off, they rolled up their characters, we recorded it, and then they decided to try to take over a Taco Bell. And, just out of nowhere. but it's heavy role play based, kind of like the term sandbox, where you give them a little idea and let them run with it and build the adventure around the decisions that they make.
Right. And you mentioned that, for yourself, there's some quirks with Discord that maybe are a little not accessible for some, right? I guess. And you also mentioned that players help each other. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about how the community comes together to make the game and the server accessible for everyone.
Well, the server Discord in itself, is very good about accessibility. They have it as they seem to be like really gung-ho about it. We try to keep it very simple. Like we have a category for video gaming, we have a category for tabletop gaming, and then we have like subcategories under there. Like each person that runs a game has their own little like subcategory. And to prevent like people getting blown up by notifications, not that happens with the world of cell phones at all. We create roles so that people that get assigned that role will get the notifications, as long as they have everything turned on there. And, that prevents other people from getting blown up by their phone constantly going off with the different notifications and stuff that wouldn't even matter to them.
Right. So from my experience and how you're describing it, so I've used Discord before, and it's like you said, it's a server. So what that means is, you need an invitation, you join, and then there's different kind of channels that you can subscribe to or have notifications for. And then not only are there text channels, but there are also, video or audio channels that people can kind of hop in or out of at any time. And I believe that's where you run your games. Is that right?
Yes. You're correct. Although I don't personally use the video channel. I have a face for radio, as they say. So we use the audio channels and have, bots that will play music, bots that will play like different sound effects. And, there's a bot that's supposed to record it, but our experience with it is it usually drops and doesn't always let you know that it's dropped. So we found other ways to record the sessions and podcasts that we do.
And you mentioned that you have a podcast. I believe you also put some of the games up on YouTube, right?
I do actually. Jesse and myself do the Blind Nights podcast. You can find that on Apple Podcast, Overcast, Spotify. There's several other places as well, and I will upload those to the Knights of Braille YouTube channel as well. And also recently, I've sorry about the shameless plug here, but I also do a solo TTRPG game, like me, myself, and I. Well, it's the three people, me, myself, and I. And I am running through like different campaigns and currently doing the Curse of Strahd campaign solo, which is a lot of fun. And that's something that I do on my personal podcast feed. But it's a lot of fun.
I think you're going to have to explain a little bit more about how you play a game by yourself.
Well, growing up, I didn't have many friends. So, I learned to play. But I lived out in the country. So, playing games by myself is nothing really unusual. But you have to be really strict with yourself and actually think like, would my character, would this actually happen? And there are other sources out there that can help you play games solo. Like I said, I'm pretty much a cheapskate. Unless I have to buy it, I usually won't when it comes to something like that. But I read the description and, think, well, would my character do this? And if my character would, then I'd go ahead and do it. And if it wouldn't, then even though Richard may know what's coming up and want to do it, I'm really strict with myself and nope, sorry, you're about to jump into a hornet's nest there, and that's not going to be good for you.
Right. I just find it really fascinating how flexible role-playing games are. I mean, maybe we'll get into the video game side of things. I know some folks in Knights of the Braille enjoy them, but you can play with, a lot of people. You can play with one other person. You can just use the system and play it through on your own. It's really up to you and your gameplay style.
Exactly. And I've ran a group of 3 people. I've ran a group of 8 people, which I will never, ever, ever do again. Quite the headache. It was fun, but it was a headache. But it's all in, what you are comfortable with. Not everybody can play in a group, which is, why there is a solo option out there. And, a lot of people enjoy the camaraderie that you have by getting in a group, and creating friendships out of it.
Oh, that's a really good point. It's not just about the game. I mean, the game's great, don't get me wrong, but it sounds like you can connect with people, and it sounds like you've connected with people pretty much all over the world so far.
Oh yeah. They may not always like me in the beginning because of how my personality is, but eventually they come around. I can browbeat them into submission, I guess you could say.
Yeah. As somebody who plays, I'm playing in a group right now where, I don't know, we've got somebody in Sweden and somebody in Australia, and the time zones make it a little bit hard to coordinate. But if I hadn't played TRPGs, I don't think I would have really met anybody outside of Canada like that. Well, Richard, I can't help but ask, given that you said you do some accents or some character voices from time to time, do you think you could give us a bit of a taste of what that sounds like?
Well, it depends, girl dear. Do you want me to be the happy kind of guy, or would you like me to be evil incarnate? The choice is up to you. I can either give you a hug or slit your freaking throat.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's the easiest one to go into.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Chris Chris and I play in a historical game, and as they have me talking with a French accent since I learned a little bit of French in Canada. But yeah, you do what you can.
Oh yeah. The only French I can speak is French fries and French toast. That's about it. There's not much call for that down here in South Georgia.
Yeah. And now a message from our sponsor. Discover AMI's collection of podcasts created by and for the blind and partially sighted community. Visit ami.ca to learn more. AMI entertains, informs, and empowers. And now, back to the podcast. So I want to ask, I've been meaning to ask this for a long time, but I feel like for folks who play role-playing games, they usually have a moment or 2 or 4 that really, really stood out to them as, a moment that will go down in history. So do you have one of those moments in one of your games that you'll always remember that really stood out to you?
I actually have 3, 1 as a player and 2 as a game master. The 1 as a player happened within the first couple of sessions of me playing D&D, in which I was a sorcerer, wild magic. Well, I rolled a natural 1 in a cast of a spell. I am in the river trying to sneak into the underground hideout. Well, I freeze the river. This big brute of a half orc barbarian slips on the ice, and my head goes between his legs, in other words. And he wasn't wearing any clothing at all. And we laughed about that scene even to this day, and it was just hilarious how it happened. You couldn't have planned it to happen. And the 2 as a GM, I was running Curse of Strahd, and everybody says that I'm devious. I don't see it. but that's because I'm kind of biased. They were approaching this rundown windmill because they had heard that there were some kids being held hostage. And they go up to it. Two of the party members go in, two other ones stay on the outside. And they were trying to defeat these hags. Well, they got coerced into eating these pastries that made them fall asleep. On the outside, they didn't know what to do. So one of them, named some mistress, said, I'm going to cast acid on this part of the windmill, and then I'm going to hit it with magic missile. Well, the other character, Kelton, said, okay, well, I'll push it. And he gets a big, strong NPC, non-playable character to help him push it as well. Well, the windmill falls, killing the two kids, the three hags, and their two party members inside. And I mean, it was all such a good time. That one and the last one, Silmistra, in her backstory, had originally been a chair that got polymorphed through a bad spell reaction into a person. She did not know it. Nobody in the party knew it except, me and the person playing the character. Well, one of our magic users got behind her, accidentally, and cast a spell, dispel magic at the highest level he could, which turned her back into a chair. Nobody had any idea that she was a chair, and it was just fantastic, because from then on, everybody was like, "Oh man, that was awesome! That was fantastic!" And it's scenes and memories like that will stick with you for forever. So much fun. It's those moments that you try to build towards, and they usually just happen for no reason.
Yeah, I need to back up a little bit. I feel like you dropped a little bit of lingo that I want to just make sure that we explained. So the GM or game master. So most tabletop or most role-playing games have players who are, participating in the game, and then a game master who is facilitating. So maybe you can add on to that in terms of, as yourself as a GM, how would you describe that role?
Well, in the original edition of D&D, it was called a referee. And that's pretty much what you're doing. You're just giving them, the players, the base of the story, describing different scenes to them, and giving them little things that they need to work with. To say that I'm controlling the story as a game master is not exactly right, but it's the closest I can think to come to it, because I'm describing the scenes and the setting, but it's actual players that are telling the story of the game and what's going on. I'm just like the I guess director is a way to describe it for anybody who doesn't play. Just making sure that they have what they need in order to have the best experience at my table that they can.
Right. And when you mentioned the NPC or non-player character, the participants in the game are the player, or they play the player characters. And then there are also other people in the world. And usually the GM's role is to bring those NPCs to life for them.
Exactly. And I try to do voices with them, but it usually all come out sounding either as an Irish redneck or a Scottish redneck, or, just as a dumb redneck. They all have that Georgia twang to them, even though I do try my best. But you as a player are what a lot of people consider player characters. The NPC or non-player character is the person that the game master runs. Although I have found it really fun to allow, if the party is split up, to allow those players who are not there to be the NPCs. It's a lot of fun for me, a lot less work for me then, and they seem to have a blast doing it.
Right. And last but not least, I know you dropped the term natural one. So from my understanding is that, well, you can roll any kind of dice depending on the game, but in Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of other games, they use polyhedral dice, so dice with many different sides, or, depending on how you're rolling. But essentially, a natural 20 means something really great will happen, and a natural 1 means something not so great is going to happen for your character.
Yeah, the natural 1 is bad. And it's not just bad, it's like bad. Usually, like if a player of mine rolls a natural 1, their string will break, their weapon will break, they'll sling it so hard it flies out of their hand, something like that. Because in my feelings, something bad does need to happen. I reward all natural 20s, so therefore I'm going to keep it balanced and make all natural 1s bad as well. They usually cringe whenever they roll a natural 1 because they know their weapon's about to break.
Oh boy. Yeah. No, it keeps it interesting. If everything went your way, there wouldn't be any drama or tension.
Exactly.
So one thing I know about Knights of the Braille is that you've had a recent initiative called Everyone Games. Can you tell us a little bit more about that event? I think you had the first one last year.
We did. It's an event, a 2-day event that starts at 7:00 in the morning Eastern Standard Time and will go until 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We did have them up on Twitch and they're on YouTube as well. And we showcase different games, different TTRPGs or tabletop roleplay games that game masters want to run. One day we had some video games where people got on there and played video games. We even had some panels that where people would get in and discuss about the different communities and accessibility and things of that nature. It's really, really successful event. We raised a good bit of money last year. I can't remember the total now, but I think it was over 4,000. Chris will be able to tell you more about that because he's a lot smarter than I am. But it was a very, very successful event, and I was honored and happy to be part of it. My back, not so much the next day, because sitting in a computer chair for over 12 hours is not conducive to your back feeling very good, but well worth it, in the end to get the word out there, because that's what it's about in the end.
Just you mentioned Chris a couple of times. You're referring to Chris Cook, who is, I think, takes the lead on organizing Everyone Games and is somebody that I've played games with before. So I'm hoping we have him on the show maybe in a future episode.
I'm sorry you have to deal with him. I know I don't like dealing with him a whole lot, but no, he's a good guy. I want to say he put it to me that he's like the mouth that will badger people until they accept coming to play. But really good guy, really passionate about it as well. And from my point of view, is really, really helpful, and I'm really appreciative of everything that he does, to help Everyone Games get up and going and to continue. And I'm doing my best not to steal all of his best jokes, although I didn't know that he had any, but he's a good guy. And like I said, I'm really appreciative of him.
Yeah, no, I agree. He is a great guy. He has his moments.
We'll edit that out, right?
So with the next Everyone Games coming up this year, like you said, I know you may not be the main person in charge of organizing, but do you have any insights into what you have planned for this year?
Before I came on the show, or started talking with you all, I found out there's going to be a Pathfinder 2nd edition game. Not sure the time yet, but I know this year's will be September 30th and October 1st. There'll be the Pathfinder 2E I'm also going to run a game with the group that was in the Quest of the Braille group. We're going to keep the group together, and I'm not sure what game we're actually going to run yet, because there's like, I don't know, 45 or 50 that I'd really like to play. So I may have to roll a dice to see. But, I know that there's 2 games set up so far, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more there. We have even talked about having some play-by-post games leading up to the event for, people who are uncomfortable about being recorded, whether video or audio. We want to include them as well. So we have talked and discussed about running some play-by-posts for those people who want to participate.
Play-by-posts are basically TRPGs or role-playing games where you post text, and it's kind of like you're writing out a story in text format, just for those who are uninitiated to the genre.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm just so used to using these terms. It's like, everybody should know them,
Well, I agree, they should. Hopefully those folks listening right now who haven't played are getting an idea and getting excited about playing.
I hope so, because we'd love to have any of them, all of them in the community.
On that note, for people who are maybe listening in right now and thinking, hey, this is, I've never played a role-playing game, but I kind of want to give it a shot. Do you have anything that you want them to know or any advice to get started?
First of all, not everybody sounds as country as I do. You have all kinds of accents out there. So I'm sure there'll be somebody who, you can understand. If not, look for a play-by-post. Then you don't have to deal with any accents. But go to our website, and that is www.knightsofthebraille.com. That's KNIGHTSOFTHEBRAILLE.com. You can also email me at knightsofthebraille@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. Look us up on Twitter, and that's at Braille Knights on Twitter. We have a Facebook page, Knights of the Braille, and our website has links to the Discord. And if you want to email me to get a link to the Discord, I'll be more than happy to send that to you as well. But that's the ways to get in contact with us. Look us up on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And like I said, anything that you need, just email me, and I'll be glad to help you out.
Well, I appreciate you letting folks know that, Knights of the Braille is a very welcoming bunch. You want to get anybody set up with playing games. So thanks for the information, and thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the invite and glad to be on here. And anytime you need somebody to fill in, I can talk. I just don't know that you can understand me.
Well, it's all good. That's why we have the transcription. But no, like you said, you got a voice for radio. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Everyone Games is uniting disabled gamers, celebrities, veterans, and anyone that wants to play for a 2-day livestream event of tabletop and video games to show that everyone games. The Knights of the Braille are joined by a community of volunteers to play alongside Jennifer Kretschmer, T1J, Radders, Blind Temple, Honey and Dice, EJ from Non-Compete, Drunken Bard, History Wizard, Vadim, Runaway Robot, and Luke Gygax. You can donate now for your chance to win and play with one of these incredible celebrities and raise money for Everyone Can and StackUp.org, 2 incredible charities raising money for disabled kids and veteran gamers. Go to justgiving.com/everyone-games. That's justgiving.com/everyone-games. Join us on the 30th of September and the 1st of October to game after game of celebrity games.
Thanks very much, Chris. And that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. I really hope that you enjoyed this interview with Richard Bennett as much as I enjoyed doing it for you. For more information about Knights of the Braille, Everyone Games, and the charity partners for this year's event, check out the links in the description below. Special thanks to Richard Bennett and Chris Cook, our producer Jeffrey Rainey, executive producer Deborah Gold, and the entire team at Balance for Blind Adults. Feel free to subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. And don't forget to let us know how we're doing. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter by searching Balance for Blind Adults. You can also email the podcast with any comments, questions, or suggestions you might have at livingblindpodcast@balancefba.org. For more information about Balance for Blind Adults and our programs and services, or to access the show notes and transcription of this episode, please visit us at www.balancefba.org. I'm Naomi Hazlett, and this has been Living Blind. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Deanna, Development Officer with Balance. I'm so excited to let everyone know about our upcoming month-long Because of Balance fundraiser. Beginning October 11th, clients, staff, and friends of Balance tell their story of how Balance has changed and improved their life. The Balance team can help set up fundraising pages and record your video story if you want. Then you share your story with friends and family, asking them to make a donation in your name to support the incredible programs and services Balance offers. I don't know about you, but the Living Blind podcast just might be my favorite Because of Balance funded program. We'd love to have you join us by telling your story, sharing the other incredible stories, and helping us raise much needed funding for Balance.